This is a beautiful class of Kabbalah that I love teaching. We have lots of students here, and you can join us online, on Facebook, on Zoom, here in class if you're comfortable. It's all good. We are finishing up chapter 47 of the Tanya, which is, as I say often, one of the most profound and mystical life systems to integrate your soul and your body and learn how to masterfully flow as a soul through a body in this incarnation. So if you're new, I hope you'll enjoy this class. We're learning about a meditation that is one of the most accessible meditative systems in the entire mystical tradition in Judaism. And that is based on the human nature. If you shut the door for me, Rick, that'd be awesome. We love our kids. Based on the human nature that when someone shows me love, right? If one of these kids in the hallway would have run up and say, Cantor Smolash, I love when you come and do Shabbat with us, and they're smiling and they're beaming and they're showing me love, what happens in my heart automatically? Automatically, it's human nature, I have a love reflected to them. It's so automatic that it's like a water is reflected in, like a face is reflected in water. That's the original text the Alter Rebbe is using. Like a face reflects in water, so does one heart reflect to another. Or in this case, like all your faces are reflecting on these beautiful Zoom squares, right? If you're smiling on the Zoom square, I know that your face is smiling. It's just automatic. There's no question. Then the Alter Rebbe shared with us the content of the meditation, and that is a mashal, a metaphor, a story. Imagine, as you've heard a few times by now, a great king came and went out of their palace and went to a garbage dump on the edge of the city and pulled out someone living there, discarded by society, pulled them out, cleaned them off, brought them back to his palace, to his most private chamber, and there they shared everything in their heart with hugs and kisses. How much love would that peasant feel towards the king? Their heart would melt to overflowing. And then the Alter Rebbe says, that's exactly the situation with us, each one of us. God came to Egypt. God took us out of the lowest place in the cosmos, and brought us to Sinai, where we united with hugs and kisses. And then he went on to explain that the hugs are the mitzvahs that are embracing us. The kisses are these words of Torah that we're speaking. And even the unity of a husband and wife or a married couple, because we were actually married to God up on Sinai. We met God's essence and we were united with God. And then he goes on, lots of aspects of this meditation. He said, every time we say Baruch Atah, God's name, Asher Kidshanu, so that blessing over the wine, we might say, over any mitzvah. When we say Kidshanu, we mean that God was Mekadesh us. God was experiencing Kedushin, or marriage, and God was being united with us like a husband and wife. And then finally last week, we looked at this phenomenon that, okay, I say this blessing all the time. I'm not aware that God is marrying me. I open a Torah and learn all the time. It's just words on a page. I'm not sensitive that this is happening, so maybe it's not happening with me, maybe just with tzaddikim. And God said, even though we're like beasts, even though we're like animals, like I'm like a cat walking by the Mona Lisa, and when I do a mitzvah, I have as much appreciation, perhaps, for that unity, the way my soul is being united and nullified before God's oneness, even though I'm just walking by like a cat looking at the Mona Lisa, it's just another part of the wall, makes no difference. It's still happening, it makes no difference. It makes no difference whatsoever. The Mona Lisa is still a masterpiece. Even if a cat's a cat, the Mona Lisa is still the Mona Lisa. And even if I am thinking about my cup of coffee in the morning, when I say the Shema, that's still the Shema. And that unity is happening. So that brings us, we're going to finish a chapter and then start the next chapter, which is just pushes it to the next level. I love the next chapter, 47. Any questions from anyone here about that very quick review and where we're at, where we're holding? Or from in the class, Rick? No, we're good? All right. Let's go on. We're page 718 in the Tanya at the very bottom. Uma shekatuv behemot lashon rabim. Doreen, go ahead.
And as for the use of the plural form beasts, which is inconsistent both with the singular form mentioned earlier and, quote, and I am a fool, and with the singular form mentioned later, that I am constantly.
All right, so the Alter Rebbe is now looking at the dikduk, at the grammar, and saying, it should say, even though I'm a beast before you. But it says, even though I am beasts before you. And what does beasts refer to? It's not one person we're talking about. It's not that I am a beast. It's that every single level. You might think that that the tzaddik, some great tzaddik, even though I can't appreciate the unity that happens when we do any mitzvah here at Temple, when we do any Torah study, maybe someone on a higher level, maybe a tzaddik can understand it. And so the quote here was, I'm like beasts before you, as in not just my level, but the level of a tzaddik. And as we'll learn, even the level that the tzaddik draws from, the level of dat elyon, that also is like a beast before God's oneness. Because even the highest level of dat, the highest level of knowledge from which all knowledge and all connection to God is drawn in the cosmos, right? Even above das of Atzilus, for those who have done the Kabbalah with us, even that level, same as me. It's just a beast before God's oneness, because once you leave infinity, now you're just not infinity, and nothing else has any relevance. It all compacts down to one level, which is like beasts. So I shouldn't be upset that I'm not sensitive to it. I should still work on being more sensitive to it, but I should know that even the level of a tzaddik, who's way more sensitive than me, even the level of das elyon, which is cosmically sensitive to God, all that is the same. All that is just basically may as well be a cat wandering by the Mona Lisa. But it doesn't change that unity is happening in my soul and your soul. L'remez kilfanav yitbarech gam bechinat dat elyon hakolel chesed gvura nidme kiv hemot v'asiya gufanit legabe or ein sof.
This intimates that before him, even dat elyon, supernal knowledge, which comprises chesed and gevura, is like beasts and a physical creation. That is, the physical world of Asiya, not its spiritual counterpart, when compared with the light of the Ein Sof.
Right, so that level, dat elyon, which has all the chesed and all the gevura that can ever come into the world. So any feeling of love or awe anyone has ever had or could possibly have, that's drawn from this dat elyon. It's contained in it. It has all the feelings in the possible cosmos. And yet, even that level of dat, it cannot appreciate the oneness that's happening, and it's like a beast before that phenomenon. So we shouldn't be we shouldn't be dismayed that you and I are perhaps insensitive to this amazing unity that's happening. We just go ahead and do it. Any questions on that? It's a major concept that we want to solidify. That at the same time as we're working on my sensitivity, I know that it's not dependent on my sensitivity, and that unity is happening every time I do a mitzvah. A little head nodding. All right. Kmo shekatuv kulam b'chokhma sita. You'll need to unmute, Linda. Thanks.
As it is written, you made asita them all with wisdom, thereby comparing the level of chokhmah, wisdom, with Asiya, physical creation. From God's perspective, chokhmah and Asiya are equally distant.
This is a verse that's often brought up to explain this phenomenon. It's written, Kulam b'chokhmah sita, you made everything with wisdom. That could mean you made everything really well with good craft. Look at the mountains. You made them, and they're still standing. You made them very wisely, right? You made squirrels, and look at the jumps they could do. You look at the wisdom that went into making that squirrel. God's craftsmanship is unparalleled, right? That's great, and we're praising God's wisdom. But the Alter Rebbe says, no, wait a minute. It's not just that God made everything with good handicraft, with good wisdom. It's that literally, what was the physical material that God used to make the world? It wasn't rocks and water and atoms. It was literally chokhmah. It was literally wisdom. And to God, when God's making the physical world, that's the same thing as God's chokhmah. The two levels are identical. Because as we said, compared to God's essence, there is no difference between the lowest aspect of the cosmos, the physical world, and the highest aspect of the cosmos, chokhmah of Atzilus, in the spiritual cosmos. All that, if it's so distant from God, it now becomes just one point. It's one thing. And it's like the biggest difference we could possibly imagine in all the spiritual and physical worlds, that becomes the same thing. And God's like, yeah, I'm using Chokhmah to make the world. It's the same thing to me. That's to try and impress on us, which we can't. Like how every level is the same before God. And even the tzaddik and even Dat Elyon, it's basically all just like physical reality. It's all the same. It's just a cat walking in front of the Mona Lisa. I got a Yeah, you got a comment for us, Rick? But that's it's a geschmack, right? It's a pleasure to hear that kind of stuff, right? Later. V'nikra behema rabba kmo shenitba'er b'makom acher.
And this is called Behema Rabbah, a great beast, denoting the level of beast which transcends understanding rather than that which lacks comprehension, as explained elsewhere.
So Noreen, why don't you go next, and then we'll do Rick, and then back to Doreen. So Noreen, then Rick, then Doreen. This goes. If this was lofty stuff, he now launches us even higher. So don't worry if this is a little bit outside of our current level. But now he gets to something called Behema Rabbah, which is the source of Dad and Great Tzaddikim, and it's called the Great Beast. Vehu Shem Ban Begimatria Behema Shelifnei Hatzilut. This is the name of Ban. Go ahead.
And this is the level of the supernal name of Ban, one of the 4 variations of the Tetragrammaton, corresponding with the number 52, with the same numerical equivalent of the Hebrew word behema, beast, which is on a level even preceding Atzilut.
So we could do a year course on this topic, on the names of God and how they permutate to different other names depending on the numbers. What's happening is, very quickly, if the 4 letters of God's name, the Tetragrammaton, a Yud and a Hey and a Vav and a Hey, right? And that equals 26, right? The basic number is 26. You add it up, right? 1 Yud, 2 Heys is 20, and then the Vav is 6, so that's 26. But you can take the Yud and spell it out, give it the milui, the filling. So instead of just the 10 for the Yud, you get Yud, Vav, Daled, adding another 10 there, because Vav is 6, Daled is 4. So in that case now, that Yud is equal to 20 instead of 10. But there's different spellings of how you could say a letter. So sometimes you're spelling hey, hey, hey. Sometimes you're spelling hey, hey, Yud, and other combinations. And then, okay, which one do you spell which way? Once you add all that together, you get 4 values for how much that tetragrammaton equals in Gematria. And those are corresponding to 4 very lofty names of God, right? Ma is 45, Ban is 52, Sag is 63, and Av is 72. So these are very Kabbalistic names for God. And here he's talking about Ban, that 52 name, which is equivalent to Behema Rabbah and is the source of Dat in Great Tzaddikim. So trust me, I don't understand one thing of what I just said. Neither should anyone else here. But that's just, the spark notes on what he's talking about. And let's come back down to our conversation, which is no matter how high a level you're talking about, it's all the same. It's all beasts before God. And yet, in reality, it's all connected, even though our experience of it is that we're all beasts before God. So that's the point we want to take home. The reality of the mitzvah is it creates this unity that we're married to God. We're elevated to God's level of holiness, even if we have no experience of it. Yes, Rick. And you wanna turn on your phone and I'll mute. You put on. There you go.
Okay. The 2 major points of this chapter, what I got out of it was that we don't understand the consequences of our mitzvah, but God does, and they're all holy. Correct? That's the first concept. Yeah. Second one is that even if we don't feel holy, we don't feel that the mitzvah is doing any good, it still is. We're still all beasts. Yeah. Is that correct? Is that what the whole chapter is about?
Okay, why don't you mute? I'll mute. Yeah, so that is correct. Those 2 points are accurate. But that's not what the whole chapter is about. That's the final point of the chapter. The whole chapter is about reflected love. Okay. So all this is details in the meditation that should cause us to love God even more, because yes, God took me out of Egypt like a king that would take a peasant out of a dunghill. Yes, God is so much more above me than the king could be above a peasant. So that caused me to love God even more. Yes, every time I say Asher Kitchanu, now I'm not just like a peasant being united with a king. I'm like a husband and wife. I'm like a married couple with a higher level of unity. That makes me feel even more love. And then the Alter Rebbe says, yeah, it's going to get in your way that you don't experience that unity. Don't worry. No one experiences it. We're all beasts. That's the final point of the chapter. But it's there to make me love God even more. So it's all about adding details to this meditation of reflected love. Good. I got it. His head is nodding. You can't see it on the...
So the last piece that we talked about
Yeah.
is kind of like, other than Ein Sof, everything's a pancake.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And really, there's even levels like whatever you want to say. You know, other than the essence of the Ein Sof itself, the absolute essence, everything, it's just a pancake. It's all like physical reality. All right, 47. When we start, yes, Eleanor. You want to, yeah.
It's a question, but I'm going to make a statement. It feels like it said that we're all equal in the world, that we're on the level, and Asilut and all the other worlds, whatever we do in mitzvahs, we're all the same. That's what I heard. Like
Correct.
we're at
So
the level of Sadiq and, you know.
Correct. And there's two aspects to that. One is, okay, on the level of my sensitivity, we're not the same, right? From my perspective, I do a mitzvah, I walk away, and I might as well have just twiddle my thumbs, perhaps. I'm a little more emotionally engaged, hopefully, but how much do I understand? Nothing compared to this tzaddik, right? But from God's perspective, like Cindy said, it's just one pancake, and the tzaddik and me, from God's essence, we're both exactly the same level. So really, there is a perspective, the highest possible perspective, where we really are at the same level. But as created beings, we're not. But now look at the mitzvah, and that's another story. If me and a tzaddik both put $1 in a pushka, guess what? From the pushka's perspective, from the perspective of that mitzvah, there's now $2 in a pushka. They've been given to tzedakah, and they are exactly the same $2. And there's no more holiness included in the dollar from the tzaddik than from mine. I know people like to keep these dollars, but halachically, you can take these dollars and just change them, put them in the bank, put them back in circulation. People are going to take them wherever, do whatever they want with them. From the mitzvah's perspective, it is exactly the same. And that's why we had that piece about Shabbat, and it's the same punishment when you break Shabbat. Even though a tzaddik has much more appreciation, we are both accomplishing the same thing when we observe Shabbat. And so it's the same consequence if we break it, equally high. And when we do a mitzvah, we've accomplished exactly the same thing, equally high. That I'm agreeing with you. It doesn't sound like it. All right, what's the next question before we start 47? Okay, if you're online or if you're learning with us at some point in the future, feel free to email me, msmolash@temple-israel.org. Any questions you have, I'm happy to engage and answer. Let's go on to chapter 47, page 721. So now, even if I'm convinced that I should have a reflected love to God based on Yetziat Mitzrayim, based on us having left Mitzrayim, and it wasn't that great, and isn't it just like all these pieces of the mashal that we learned from the king and the peasant and the married couple? But that was how many thousand years ago, right? How can I really be emotionally invested, me, Michael Smolash, in something that happened so many thousands of years ago? So if I'm going to have the real impact of this meditation, I want to have some kind of tool, some kind of bridge, so it's immediate, so it affects me right now. So now we're gonna start off by answering that question, and then we're going to start our journey into, I said this section not only presents this profound meditation that is accessible to absolutely everyone, but also we're going to start to learn some of the profound kavanot, which not just intention, but like the mystical flows that are attached to each of the sections of the Shema, such that when we pray, it's going to come to life in a different way, in details. So this chapter, we're going to start that journey talking about the Shema itself and how it relates to this topic. והנה בכל דור ודור וכל יום ויום חייב אדם לראות עצמו כאילו הוא יצא היום ממצרים.
You want me to go?
Yeah, go ahead. Well, hold on.
In every generation and every day, a person is obligated to regard himself as if he had that day come out of Egypt.
And just for any confusion, that is Rick Feldman. That is not Michael Smolash. He just happens to be on my phone here in the class. So he's right with me. We're learning together. So in every generation and every day, a person is obligated to regard himself as if he'd come that day out of Egypt. So where do we recognize this text from? Someone raised their hand who recognizes it. Anybody? We've heard it before, right? I'm sitting around a table. I'm eating some matzah. Exactly. It's from the Seder. We got it. So we say in every generation, but hold on. V'chol yom vayom, that's not in the Haggadah. That's something the Alter Rebbe is now paraphrasing and adding immediacy to this statement. So we're at the Seder, we're celebrating coming out of Egypt, we're celebrating getting out of our limitations, and we sing, in every generation, a person has to regard themselves as if they came out of Egypt. Good. That's a formal mitzvah, by the way. Right? That's why, never mind why. That's a formal mitzvah that every day I should remember that I came out of Egypt, as in, imagine baby Smolash, or 10-year-old Smolash, or 30-year-old Smolash, and I was a slave, and in my lifetime, God came and took me personally out of Egypt, brought me personally to Sinai, and I should act, A, like I understand what it means to be enslaved, and no one should be enslaved, and B, that I should appreciate my freedom, and I should act like someone that was free to my lifetime, and the ability to be able to just come to temple and pray when I want and do what I want and work on myself whenever I want and live the way I want to live as a Jew. I should celebrate that. That's great. But there's actually another opinion. Wrote down where it is. There's another Mishnah. I don't remember where it is. If I get to it, I'll see. There's another Mishnah where there's the opinion not that you should just remember it, that you came out of Egypt sometime in your life, in your generation. There's an opinion that the Alter Rebbe is bringing in that you should actually remember it every day. As in, not, when I was 20, I'm going to imagine that I came out of Egypt, but today, I woke up this morning and I didn't have my coffee and drive over to temple. Instead, I woke up this morning in slavery and God came this morning and pulled me out of Mitzrayim, and here I am, I just crossed the sea, and now, bang, I'm standing in front of you. Today, every day, right? I should regard myself as if I came out of Egypt today, now. So what's going on? This is a strange thing, because obviously that's not the case, right? It was something historic that happened a long time ago. It has to do with how we look at the Torah. It's a bit of a journey. It's an important journey. And I think at the end of this, many of us will just look at the Torah very differently than even 10 minutes ago. There's a concept that the Torah is nitzchi, the Torah is eternal, that the Torah always applies. So, there was some law about not eating pigs in the Torah. I could say, there was issues with keeping it clean back then, but now it's fine. We have better sanitation, so it doesn't apply now. According to Kabbalah, you can't look at Torah that way. You can't reason and say, there was some practical reason, so it doesn't apply now. According to Kabbalah, the Torah is just always true all the time. Now, in this conversation, let's have a little reform bracket here. Right? I'm not here to get into the 6 mitzvahs, perhaps, that many of us, myself included, have deep moral issues with and feel like that. How can that be true? We need to do something about this to change Judaism. Fine, that's a reform stance, and this class is not about taking on those 6 mitzvahs. This class is about, I'll leave that to other people, This class is about the other 607 mitzvahs. let's focus on those. Let's do those with as much love and awe as we can. Let's elevate ourselves. And if you're done with those 607 mitzvahs, including loving another Jew, including never using speech to embarrass anybody in any way, etc., then give me a call and you can take over the class for me. But that's my approach. So for those 607 mitzvahs, let's have a reform conversation. We're looking at them as if they're completely eternal, they're always true. But what about the stories in the Torah? Okay, end of bracket. What about the stories in the Torah? To everybody, there's an issue, which is, okay, you could tell me not to murder another person is always true. I get it. And the other stuff, okay, I see what you're saying. It's beyond me. If I disagree, I can't, but it's always true, even if it looks like it might have changed over time. But a story, right? The story of how Jacob, put strange sticks in some water and had sheep look at them. Like, why is there so much detail in the Torah of that story, and how is that story eternal? Right? When they tell the story over and over again, right? When Judah is approaching Yosef. And they keep telling the story over and over again. What happened with their father, etc. Why am I hearing this story over and over again? How is that applicable? Isn't it just a story? So the first answer is, okay, these stories have morals, and those morals are eternal. So I can learn from a story. It has some kernel, a lesson, and that lesson is eternal, even if the story was historical. And that's great. It's good that we should relate to stories and draw the wisdom out of them, and fine. But Kabbalah says there's a deeper truth. There's a deeper truth. And it's not just that there's a kernel of wisdom in the story that is eternal. It's that actual story, that physical story, is still happening right now to every single one of us and happening all the time. Now, it's happening a different way. Right? It might not look like sticks in water with sheep looking at them and those white stripes. It might look like my actual tefillin, and the stripes that creates on my arm, and me looking at them, and my animal looking at them, and etc. Right? So it's God talking in all kinds of metaphors, but the story is still active. The story is still here. The story is still happening, and not just for me today, but for every one of us today, all the time. Right? These stories transcend time and space and logic, and they're always happening at that level of sod, of the kabbalistic level. So what's the meaning of Yetziat Mitzrayim? We've talked about this many times. Mitzrayim means limitations, and coming out of Mitzrayim means being able to leave my limitations. So how is Yetziat Mitzrayim, how is leaving Mitzrayim still happening now and still happening today, such that I should consider myself as if I was freed every single day from Mitzrayim? Well, I woke up this morning not in a soul. I woke up this morning also in a body. And that body has all kinds of limitations. I can only see what's here in the room. I can't see into the spiritual. I can't see into the past. I can't see around the world. I just see what's in front of me. I have a stomach which tells me it's hungry, and I should be distracted from anything abstract and find, my lox and my coffee or whatever I have, and I should feed my stomach. And then I have a brain that tells me, I should protect myself and not worry about other people, and if it hurts them, don't worry, because I'm an animal and I'm supposed to protect myself. I have all these limitations just flowing in a body. Even if I do everything right, I'm still very, very, very constricted, and the soul is like squeezed into this very narrow place. But there is a way, as we'll learn, there is a way to actually come out of Mitzrayim. And what is that? Every time we say the Shema, as we'll learn. Every time we say the Shema, now my soul is united with God, whether I feel it or not. It's united with God, it leaves the body, it rushes out, and experiences the same union that we had with God at Sinai, like a married couple. And the soul is in a state of great, great joy. And that is something that happens every single day, and to me, every single day. And especially if you have a practice of saying the Shema in the morning and evening, now you're really embodying it. And so, why is it enough? That's my introduction to the chapter, so I won't go further. Let me. Before we go inside the text, any thoughts on that concept? If I lost you, just tell me I lost you, and we can. No, we're good. All right, so we're now going in, and this quote, we should see ourselves every day as if we came out of Egypt. That's not something that happened thousands of years ago. That's what happened this morning. That's what happened this morning. V'hi yitziat nefesh elokit mimasar haguf mashka dechivya. Are we back to Cindy? Cindy, why don't you start us over? Oh. I don't remember. New chapter. Why don't you start for us?
Okay. This refers to the release of the divine soul from the confinement of the body, the serpent's skin.
So what a serpent's skin? Serpent represents klipa. As we've learned, that's the superficial shell of reality, where we look and we just see physical stuff and we go, yeah, I like that physical stuff, and I focus on it, and I lose the depth of life. That's klipa. That's the serpent. And so the body's all that. It's not evil, God forbid, but it doesn't have a compass bearing. It doesn't have limits. It just focuses on the physical, and I could think that's all there is in my life. That's Mitzrayim. That's confinement, right? That's being in this narrow place where the soul is squeezed and stuffed into the physical senses of the body, and it might forget who it is. Li kalel biyichud or insof baruch hu al yedei esek haTorah v'amitzvot bichlal. Doreen, go ahead.
In order to be absorbed into the unity of the light of the Blessed Ein Sof by engaging in the Torah and commandments in general.
All right, so as we learned, if we want to be out of this, we want to be out of Mitzrayim, we want to be released. Every time we do a mitzvah, every time we learn Torah, that's happening. And boom, that's our way of getting out. And I can become more and more sensitive to it, but it doesn't even matter if I am. I'm still, every time, getting out. Vifrot, b'kabbalat malchut shamayim b'kriyat Shema, sheba mekabel umamshich alav yichudo yibarech, b'ferush be'amro Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad.
And in particular, through accepting the sovereignty of heaven during the recital of the Shema, wherein the person explicitly accepts and draws upon himself God's unity when he says, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one.
So that's what the Shema is. So we're starting our journey now into taking Kabbalah and using it to add depth to our prayers. I want to make sure we're all in the class here. Yeah. So what does the Shema mean? The Shema means that I'm drawing God's oneness, God's achdut, echad, I'm drawing it on myself. And I'm saying, no matter what my senses have been telling me that there's 20 people in this room praying or 1,000 people in this room praying, it's all one. It's all just one light. And I am bringing that consciousness into my consciousness, and now my soul is uniting with that level in God. And when I draw that unity on myself, and my soul is subsumed in that unity, now I have this oneness with God. I've escaped my limitations. So
It has previously been explained in chapter 46 that our God is understood in the same way as the God of Abraham and so forth, because he becomes nullified and absorbed into the unity of the light of the Blessed Ein Sof.
we talked about before that when we say Elkei Avraham, Elkei Yitzchak, etc., we're not just reminding God of our forefathers. So God will say, oh, Abraham was such a good guy, I'm going to forgive Smolash, right? Okay, I get that. But actually, the forefathers and foremothers were so connected to God that God was no longer God and they were them. God was now their God. They were that connected. Like, these are my glasses. No one would question, no one else has worn these. I'm the only one that wears them. They're part of my face. People recognize them. These are Smolash's glasses. And they're a part of who I am in many ways, right? How could you take something so abstract as God and say that that belongs to a human? That's Abraham's God? That's Isaac's God? That's Sarah's God? How can we have the hubris to even say that? It's because they did this to such a degree all the time. They were like a chariot that just has no will of its own. That's actually what happened. They were so united that it was actually Abraham's God. Like, this is my glasses. And we actually can get to that level, not because we're like them and not from our own work, but just because we inherit it from them, right? Abraham and Sarah were the first that had to work and get from literally being born, in Abraham's case, in idol worship, and then working up every level on his own until he reached the level of a Merkava, of a chariot, and he was completely united with God. And because of that, now we each, it's, what language do you use yet? We just receive that as an inheritance automatically because of with the lineage we're in. That soul spark comes down to us too, and we can do that unity just by saying the Shema. Rak she'Avraham zachal hazeh b'masav v'hilucho b'kodesh mimadrega l'madrega, as I just said. Go ahead.
Except that Abraham merited this union by reason of his works and his advancing in holiness from degree to degree until he uplifted himself to this great level of nullity and unification of self with God.
As it is written, and Abram journeyed going on and on to the south.
So we talk about the south. You're muted. We talk about the south, and south represents chesed, love, and so that phenomenon that Abraham kept traveling to the south, that was a physical story, but it also was a spiritual reality, that Abraham every day in his life got further and further and closer to the level of being the absolute channel for chesed, for love, and he opened that channel for all of us.
Interesting, he changed it from Abraham to Abram, the two periods.
Well, he's quoting, so at that point, the question is, why did the Alter Rebbe use Avram instead of Avraham? And that's because that quote from Genesis 12 was actually before Avram's name was changed, so he's using the name from the quote. Aval anachnu Yerusha umatana hi lanu, shenatan lanu et Torato v'hilbish ba ritzono v'chachmato yitbarech hamiuchadim b'mauto v'atzmato yitbarech b'tachlit hayichud. Paula, do you want to read for us? Is that today's not good? No, okay. Eleanor, why don't you take it over?
But as for us, the children of Abraham, for us it is a heritage and a gift, in that he has given us his Torah and has clothed it in his will and wisdom, which are united with his essence and being in perfect unity.
Oh yeah, there's so much in this one, right? There's so much in this one. How do we even learn something so like this is like it just bursts open into your brain, right? So we got it as a heritage and a gift, right? We got it as Yerusha and Matana, and those are two different levels, right? Because the point is that it doesn't matter what level I'm at, I still get it. It doesn't matter how wise I am, how sensitive I am. Avraham and Sarah opened up this channel that each of us has this unity whenever we do a mitzvah or learn Torah, and boom, it's done. Doesn't matter how deserving I am or what I've done. But even in that, there's two levels. There's the level of a gift, right? When you give someone a gift, you don't get anything back. You're just giving them a gift, right? There's nothing I've done to receive a gift. And yet, you only give a gift to certain people, right? So I got some pleasure. There's some connection, at least, of why I give a gift. It's not just completely random. Whereas an inheritance, now I could have a child that's still in utero, and they still get my inheritance by halakhic law. So I might not even know that child exists. They've done nothing for me. There's no conscious connection, and yet automatically they get it. No credit whatsoever to them or their qualities or anything. It's just automatically bestowed. So that's the degree to which this comes to us. This ability to leave Mitzrayim every day, to leave our limitations and become a different person united with God. In that, God gave us God's Torah and clothed in it God's will and wisdom, which are united with God's essence in perfect unity. So this is not like theology or dogma. This is a spiritually dynamic thing. And that's, we sometimes think that, okay, we went to Sinai, all this happened, this thing came down, whatever it is, now we have this book, It's a book that God wrote. I believe it. Okay, that's a statement of faith. And in it are some instructions, some assignments of what we should do that God put in a book. So since God put them in this book, I should really do them, because look who the author of this book was, right? Very, very lofty credentials. Take that idea and toss it out. That's nothing to do with Kabbalah. That's not what we're doing here. I'm not doing mitzvahs because I got them from someone that I really trust and their assignments. I'm doing mitzvahs in the sense of tzavta, of connection. Connection in the deepest sense. It's not that God put assignments in a book. It's that God is so united with the Torah that Kabbalah says the Torah is actually God in book form. That is God. As we'll see in the Zohar, it says the Torah and God are completely one. What does it mean? Not that it's exactly what God wants or exactly what God thought. It's that is God. There's no, you pick up a Torah or try to reach the abstract and put your hand on God, which you can't. You've just done the same thing. They're absolutely one, absolutely united. So that means now when I am learning Torah, it's not that because I'm doing an assignment from God, now God is saying, thank you, Smolash, here's your reward, I'm lifting up to my level of holiness. No, I've just absorbed God in book form, right? It's so beautiful and so stunning. Like, how do you even absorb that? But that's what it is. And when I do a mitzvah, the same thing. I'm connecting to God's essence. That's why it has the power to bring me out of Mitzrayim no matter what. And imagine if even 1 out of 10 times I did a mitzvah or learned Torah with this meditation fresh in my mind, with this sense of what's really happening, how much reflected love this would all create in me. It's this whole meditation is you could it's almost all you need in avoida. I mean, it's not, but it's crazy to me. That how's that point landing on people? Cindy, you look like you're biting your tongue.
It's a lot to absorb. You know, it's kind of one of those moments where you just kind of go, okay, this is too much. I just can't. I just keep wondering about the Abraham and Sarah name change. And when their names were changed, is that when they were like, became one with God and attached to God in the way that we're talking about?
Yeah, I can't speak to the degree to which, and obviously, you know, Abraham was a tzaddik beforehand. He didn't like suddenly become a tzaddik, but there's levels of being a tzaddik. And absolutely, when the hey was added to their names, that was a sense of they're being united with God, the hey of God's name. So for sure, yeah.
Okay.
Torah is God in book form. That's a hard concept.
I'm going to quote Rick. Rick said, the Torah is God in book form. That's a hard concept. I agree. It is a hard concept. But that's, in many ways, that's the flip of approaching the Torah through the eyes of Kabbalah or approaching the Torah just through the eyes of Jewish tradition. Right? That's what it is. Right? And really it's incremental steps of getting closer to it every day and putting that lens in front. And that's why, as we'll learn, we say the phrase about Yetziat Mitzrayim every day. Because tradition understands, God understands, this is way beyond us. Like okay, the Torah is God. Great. I just wrote this Torah and you're saying it's God, right? How am I going to absorb that? Okay, here's the tool. Every day, as part of the Shema, you're going to say, God who took you out of Mitzrayim, I'm God, your God, right? So that includes all of it. As the Alter Rebbe will say, I'm not going to go through all of it right now, but it's attached to the Shema. We say it every day as a separate mitzvah, but it's attached because it really is the key. It really is the key. If I say, this Torah actually is God, they're completely united, now I'm connected to God, now I'm out of my limitations, right? That's how I do it. And I try to remember that every day, so that every day it's a little bit clearer and clearer the lens. And the more I do that after a month or a year of doing that, now when I do a mitzvah, it's going to have more impact. And I will get myself closer to the, where the tzaddik is. I'll be a little above my Russia insides. Yes, Noreen?
So the Torah is the way God reveals himself to the Israelites, to us, through that journey. That's how we get to know God. That's how we get to develop a relationship. That's why the Torah is God.
Yeah, I mean, there are other revelations. Obviously, there was the whole, fire and things shaking. So there were other revelations.
But that's the way God's revealing himself to us and to the people through the Torah, through the things that happen in the Torah.
Yes. But also, even if it's not a revelation to me, even if I'm just reading it and it's a book, the connection is still happening in my soul. Right? So revelation has a sense of there's something that I'm aware of or seeing, right? And at my bar mitzvah, did I know I was being connected to God? No. My parents wanted me to learn this. There was going to be a party. I had a bar mitzvah. It was what you did, right? Was I aware? Was there any revelation that happened? Not to 13-year-old Michael, but did the connection happen? 100%. Didn't matter how much revelation there was. So yes, it's true, but the point here is actually the union and the connection, which goes beyond how much revelation there was.
I think it's the same.
You think it's the same?
Yeah. I mean, if you didn't have the Torah, you wouldn't know God.
Correct.
So,
It's the channel through which revelation happened, for sure. Yeah.
The pathway.
Yeah. Sorry, where are we? I lost myself. Merited.
724.
But we didn't do the bottom, and surely, did we? V'hareze?
Yeah.
V'hareze kilu natan lanu et atzmo kivyachol. And who's reading? I think it's Noreen.
And surely this is as if he gave us his very self, as it were, since his wisdom and will are one with him through Torah study and performance of mitzvot, we're able to take him, as it were, and be united with him.
And let's read the next one. The next one is a beautiful point that's also so expanded in Kabbalah and Chassidus. K'mo shekatuv b'zohar hakadosh al pasuk ve'ikhu li truma dili klomar oti. Go ahead, Sue Ellen.
This is as the Zohar comments on the verse, that they bring to me an offering. The word to me, says the Zohar, actually means to take me, to take God.
So often you have these Torah verses that we hear so often we don't notice that there's grammatical problems in them, or we think that's just part of the poetry of the Torah. But Kabbalah pulls out meaning from them. When it says ukuli truma, it should say utruma, and an offering. And the Alter Rebbe says, no, what's happening? Vikuli, not bring an offering to me, but rather take me as an offering, right? Me being the essence of God, me being God's self. And so the point we'll get to next class is, by following the Torah, by learning the Torah, by doing a mitzvah, we're not just following God's directions and then, yay, now I'm connected with God because I did something for God. By adhering to the Torah, I'm actually taking God. God says, Chuli, take me. You think it's something separate, you don't get it. It's exactly me. I am the Torah. And when you take the Torah, you take me. When you do it, when you learn it, you're taking my essence. You're grabbing my essence. How is that possible? Because God could unite God's self with the Torah. That's like I said, I think it's, on the one hand, something challenging for us as Reformed Jews, because, hold on, what about this and this in the Torah that we historically have issues with or currently have issues with? I get it. And I don't want to take that on. If I have certain values, I should act on those values genuinely. If it's really deeply meaningful to me, good. At the same time, like I said, for the other 607 commandments, we should do them and have the advantage of doing them as if I'm uniting with God's self. Why not, right? I'll be much higher functioning in everything I do, helping the world, repairing the world, learning, giving charity, feeding people, loving other Jews. Let me do them with the kind of joy as if I'm actually taking God when I do them. And we'll be better Reformed Jews, we'll be better Jews. Let's do a little meditation. Oh, I didn't get a raised eyebrow from Rick, but I got like a... Oh, good. We're going to finish with a little bit of a meditation, because that's what this is. So if you find yourself in a comfortable position, and just let your eyes close. If you've meditated in other traditions, know that in Jewish meditation, the positions are not so key. for various reasons, but just any comfortable position, sitting or lying. Let our breath flow with depth and evenness. And let your eyelids smooth, your jaw relax, all muscles falling off your skeleton nice and relaxed towards the earth. Feel the weight of your body on the chair and the floor. If you're comfortable breathing through your nostrils, let your mouth close and breathing in and deeply out through your nostrils. Keep that breath going. We're going to open up the breath into 4 stages with 4 counts for each stage. 4 to breathe in, 4 to hold the breath inside, 4 to breathe out, and 4 to let the breath move out of your body. So together with me, starting in 1, 2, 3, 4. Keep that breath in. 2, 3, 4. Exhale through the nostrils. 2, 3, 4. Stay nice and empty. 2, 3. Starting again, breathing in. 2, 3, 4. Nice and full. Back out. 3, 4. Nice and empty. Keep that going on your own pace. And if you meditated with us, let your wisdom gateway open. Let your wisdom gateway open nice and wide, nice and present. And let's place into that wisdom gateway this divine concept. When I learned Torah just now, when I said the Shema perhaps just this morning, God took me out of Mitzrayim. It happened not several thousand years ago, it happened 2 minutes ago. It was the same exact unity, the same stories happening in physical form right now in each of us. It's continually happening. And let that divine concept grow in your mind. This meditation is all about increasing the detail, connecting to the abstract information. Let it fill your mind to the brim. More and more details. Yeah, God just took me out of Mitzrayim. Any limitations? Notice any emotions you're feeling, any gratitude, any love, any awe. Hopefully the doorbell's ringing inside too. If you're watching online, feel free to pause your device and meditate for as long as feels comfortable, 5, 10, 15 minutes. If you are with us, just wiggle your toes, open your eyes. You know, there's a story about a chassid who he was I don't know what he was learning or something, but his family saw him kind of staring out the window one night, late at night. He was meditating on some concept like we are right now, and they all went to sleep. And they came back in the morning, and he was in the exact same position, still just staring out the window. So, if you're wondering how long to meditate, it's up to you. The sky's the limit. Very sensitive people, they just are in the zone, and you go higher and higher, deeper and deeper. So in Jewish meditation, it's not like, there's not a practice where you say, okay, 5 minutes a day, and now 10, now 24 hours. Now you need a 7-day retreat. You can meditate for 2 minutes. You can meditate for 24 hours. It's up to you. All right, I'm going to sign off of Facebook. Thank you for joining us on Temple's channel. Please, as always, if you'd like to join our class, email Maya at temple-israel.org. We'd love to have you. And email me as well, m.smolash at temple-israel.org if you have any questions. Thanks for learning with us. See you next time.
Cantor, when you say the Shema, are you talking about the first, because Reform doesn't say the other two paragraphs.
So the basic halacha is the part that we say. So every time we say the Shema, including the part that every Reform congregation says, that is halakhically equivalent to saying the Shema, and it does it. So absolutely that applies to every service in every Reform synagogue, in every synagogue. The V'ahavta that we say, that gets it done. Now, halakhically, are there other places where they include other paragraphs, and for a reason? We'll get into that next week, and specifically what those paragraphs are about and how they're connected. There's a lot of richness in that, and as Reform Jews, we can add what we want, right? But yes, it does refer to our Shema and our V'ahavta. That's the part I'm talking about. Okay, signing off. See you next time.
I have a question.
Oh, okay. Let's do questions.
When we meditate, do we meditate on concept, or can we meditate on a prayer too? Like when we meditate, say the Shema.
100%. Yeah, prayer is meant to be meditation, and that's why it says Shema. Listen. Right? What's that about? God's one. I could just say, Hashem Echad, and I'm done. Why the Shema? Because we want to stop, we want to open up our senses, we want to slow down our breathing, we want to get our das into this prayer so we feel it. And absolutely, the whole point of doing these meditations is so that when I pray, I'm feeling more emotions, and when I do mitzvahs, I'm feeling more emotions, and when I learn, I'm more connected to it. So yes, 100% when you're praying, and it doesn't have to be exactly this meditation now, just meditate on the words of the Shema, and you'll find you have more emotional connection to them. What's the next question? Yes.
To me, it feels like a big chain. A chain of we were talking about being married to God. We were talking about the Kedoshim, right? Every time you say Kedoshanu, yes. Mm-hmm. Then we're talking about when we're freed from Egypt every single day. We're supposed to be, which is gonna inspire gratitude and awe and love. And then at the very end of this piece, where we stopped, it was like, take me, which is also about our choice in choosing to go into that covenant and yada, yada, yada. So it's like, it's just like one piece building upon another piece building upon another piece that's supposed to lead us to, right? I think.
Absolutely. It is a design system to be done, and it's designed in order. So each piece builds on the next, and the Alter Rebbe had exactly what you're saying in mind, that each piece should add to the next and bring us up, and it works as a system, for sure. Rick, yeah, cool. No, okay, okay, beautiful. I wish we had all the time to sit and discuss this. We'll pick it up next time, and Mazel Tov, everybody. Yasher Koach.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.